So quick question for you. How can you actually not just pass on a large amount of money to your heirs, but pass on the core values and stewardship principles that created the wealth for you in the first place, but do it right? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you. You've worked so freaking hard for that money, and you're now ready for that money to start working hard for you today. You want to become work optional, where you have enough passive income coming in to pay for all of your family's needs and then some. But it's not just about helping you get rich. It's about living a rich life, because as you're blessed financially, as you have greater resources and means to do so, you can create a greater ripple effect through the lives of those around you. Thank you so much for allowing me to create a ripple effect through you guys. Again, now we're going to 11th. We are in our 11th season, not going in. We are in our 11th season right now, almost 1,000 episodes in, and that's all because of you. So thank you so much for tuning in, binging, and sharing this with others as well. By the way, if you think this podcast is amazing, or if you love this episode, not just like, but be sure to subscribe. And by the way, this episode you're going to be listening to today, you might want to have your own kids listen to this episode as well. So be sure to be there. All right, guys. So I'm bringing on a very special guest. Funny enough, I had literally just emailed one of my clients saying, if you want the best attorney out there, find Andrew Howell, right? And he's somebody that I've actually worked with now for 19, almost 20 years personally in my own life. And I'll tell you, man, he is top notch, like the best estate planning attorney that I could recommend. Now, I know there's other great ones out there, not to blow up his head too big, but I'll tell you that he is somebody that gets it. He's multi-generational attorney that's worked with massive estates, knows exactly what's happening. And especially right now in the current climate where we don't even know what's going on with taxes, on the Trump plan or whatever else, we don't even know what's going to happen with politics. What's going to happen with you as you start to build and create more wealth like we teach you on the show? What could happen? Could we end up getting taxed dramatically? Could this be a danger? What can we do to prevent against it? What about estate planning? What about all this stuff? That's what I brought Andrew on to talk about today. And by the way, be sure to check out. We'll put the contact information for him in the notes too. So Andrew, welcome to our show.
Good Lord. Now I need to live up to that, Chris, but thanks so much for that introduction. 19 years. I'll be 50 here in a couple of months, and man, it went by in a blink of an eye. But yeah, we go a ways back, but appreciate the introduction and having me on.
Yeah, we sure do. No, I appreciate being introduced to you. You were one of my first people, probably in my network of people we refer to. You are probably my second oldest contact. Somebody I shouldn't say second oldest. You're not the oldest person, or a second longest standing member of our network that we have. That some of our clients definitely know you as well. So definitely appreciate all the service you've done for us over, like I said, the last 2 decades.
Yeah, I've kind of grown up together. It's been fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, give us more of your backstory. I mean, obviously, we can kind of tell you're an outdoorsman. I know you love fly fishing. You love going to Dillon, Montana with your family and whatnot. But tell us more about you and your story.
Yeah, you caught me at home today because we're recording on a Friday. I don't know when you're going to post this, but I work from home on a Friday, so I'm kind of down in my man cave, if you will, and where nobody bothers me. But yeah, so my elevator pitch, which is a horrible one, is that I'm an estate lawyer, and nobody would actually call themselves a lawyer unless they had to. And I don't feel like a real lawyer, and I love the attorney jokes because I don't feel like they apply to me. And I graduated law school 24 years ago. I passed the bar exam. I'm licensed. Don't get me wrong, but if anybody has the jokes, I think that they're well earned, and I don't like talking to lawyers any more than anybody else likes talking to lawyers. And I think that, one of your goals in life when you're doing your planning and this big umbrella of financial planning that this all fits under, I think one of your goals is to keep lawyers out of your life. And that's one of the things that I love to do, right, is to help people structure their planning in such a way that things go smoothly when they die. I mean, absolutely, I do wills and trusts and providing for guardianship for kids, and which is an extremely important thing for people to do. And not many people do it, right? Only 30% of the population ever actually takes the time to meet with some bloodsucker like me and talk about death and taxes. And, life is busy and you're raising families and you're making money and you're paying taxes. And kind of always in the back of your mind that you need to do it. And, you go into a surgery or maybe you're going on vacation and you're going, I should have done my estate planning. And it's a really important piece of it. But I think another really important part of estate planning is what are you doing with your estate while you are still alive? None of us plan on dying tomorrow, right? So how is that estate functioning in the most tax efficient manner? And I certainly consider myself a tax attorney, and I hate taxes. I think that's a good thing, right? You work with a tax lawyer that loves taxes, get out of their office. But that's, business structuring and charitable things and various things that you're taking your income through. And then how do you make sure that you've protected this estate that you're working hard to create, right? That's this whole concept of asset protection. And asset protection, in my mind, is this game. Not trying to minimize its importance by calling it a game, but hoping to highlight there's just many different ways to do it, from separate ownership and assets between spouses to going offshore to the Cook Islands or Nevis and setting up a trust and putting all of your assets there. And the goal in that game has to be finding the sweet spot, right? Where you identify a family's risks, right? What are your actual risks? And therefore, what do we put in play here to protect you from those risks? Because not many of my clients want to spend $40,000 to do a trust in Nevis. And not many of my clients need that level of planning. Some want it, but you really have to kind of understand your options before you make your decisions. So that kind of encompasses like professionally what I do. But after 24 years of doing this stuff, getting up in the morning and drafting a new will for somebody doesn't put a spring in my step. A lot of my passion is in this concept of legacy and how families can perpetuate this shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves in 3 generations dynamic, right? The first generation makes the money, the second generation spends it, and then the third generation has to go back to work. And our generation, I'm not aging you, I'm aging myself, but we are now in the decision-making chair, right? We're the presidents of companies, we're the heads of families. A lot of times we're now the oldest generation within the family. My father passed away a few years ago, and it's weird, right? Now all of a sudden you're the oldest. And that means our generation is looking at wealth transfer in a different way than previous generations. And it really is a generational shift. If you go back to my grandparents, like the greatest generation, they lived through an economic time that is unlike we've ever seen, right? We all lived through the Great Recession, 2007, 2008. We're all unhappy, right? But they lived through the Great Depression and they weren't eating. Okay. And there's this hierarchy of priorities. My grandfather, who I talk about a lot, he had this saying, and it wasn't his, I don't think, but it was money isn't everything, but it sure quiets the nerves. Right. And so when you don't know where your next meal is coming from, how you're going to feed your family, you're standing in a soup line to feed your family. When you come out of the Great Depression and all of a sudden you have some money in the bank, that felt good, right? It's nice, it's safety. And, we as human beings, we're always searching out safety in our life. And so that's where financial planning, and I think financial planning includes your attorney and your accountant, financial advisors, insurance agents. They all need to be working collectively for a family. But what that all built up thinking was, let's bundle up the most amount of money we possibly can, pay the least amount of taxes, and just dump it onto our kids. And there really isn't much thought in what the impact of that money is actually going to do. And so, what and I've been doing this for 24 years, but we wrote a book about 11 years ago and talking about what families can really do in terms of perpetuating their legacy. And we can go into all of that, but that's sort of where my passion is really helping families get clear about what they're trying to do. When we started working together, I was working at a very large law firm. In fact, it's now part of the largest law firm in the entire world. But it was a very process-based thing. It felt like this mill, right? Clients were coming in, you were pushing them right back out. You had standard sort of boilerplate documents that you would use for everybody, and all you do is really basically change their name. Now, that's still very much the prevalent way that estate planning is done, and it wasn't the way that I was taught by my grandfather to do planning, and it didn't feel right. And my law partner, David York, and I, it didn't feel right to him either. He came from a different background, but we both came to this idea, which is we weren't serving our clients. And, we were seeing the trust fund babies. We refer to it in our book as trustafarians, right? The kids that have so much money that they don't have to do anything. And
Yeah.
I really do think that to be happy in life, you have to have three things, which is you need to have somebody to love. You got to have something to do, and you need to have something to hope for. And a person that gets handed a million, or excuse me, hundreds of millions of dollars and didn't have to work for it, they don't have someone to love. They're always worried that they're just out for their money. They don't have anything to do, and certainly they have nothing to hope for. And so it's a very weird dynamic that inflow of money has happened. And we see this with the next generation, right? We get into the great or the baby boomers, right? Going through the arguably the most economic prosperity that we've ever had in America. Well, they spent a lot of money to the tune of us being in debt now to $36 trillion, right? But it did allow them to not think about money as much, and they started to think about other things. And that's where you have social change in the 60s and all these various things. But our generation is going, wait a minute. We understand the value of money, right? It lets us do what we want to do in our life. It lets us provide for our kids. It lets us go on vacation and have a great time, right? It's not good or bad. It's just how you use it. But we also want to make sure that we just don't leave our kids where they have no purpose in life. And so we've developed a whole nother system we call Chronology for families to go through and get really clear about what they're really wanting to build. Because I think that I need to know that, right? I think every financial advisor under that umbrella needs to know that. Otherwise, I'm building somebody's house without the blueprints. I don't know what they actually want in their house. And that's why that kind of factory approach to estate planning never felt right to me. Probably way more than you wanted to know.
No, that's exactly where that's the percent I was curious about because I agree. Like, I know for me personally, I don't think I'm alone. Like, one, a question I often get asked is, well, how do you pay the next generation? Because I know there's like different philosophies, like die with zero, right? Where they say, hey, why don't you gift it all before you pass on, or as much as you possibly can, so you die with zero, just enough to cover your needs, right? Which could work, may not work. And then you got other people say, well, pass it on next generation, but maybe the trust has to really dictate a lot of rules and things like that. What's your personal opinion? Like, what's maybe a better way for people to be able to do that with their kids? And like you said, not just, create these trust fund type babies, like how do we actually do it in a way that can pass on the core values and also pass on the money in a responsible way?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. The 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 two dynamics here, right, is you have the one client that says, "God, when I die, just let the kids have everything, and if they blow it, who cares? I'm dead." Right? That's one, and I still hear that, right? I do. I hear that. I hear that from clients. Doesn't make sense to me. Okay. Now, the other one is like what you said, which is give it all away before you die. So you die with zero, right? Give it to charity or whatever. And I have nothing against charitable, causes. And in fact, one of our chapters in our book that talks about successful families and how they navigate this, we devote entirely on, you know, being charitable. I mean, we don't call it that, but charity would certainly fall within that category because you put something above the family, right? They're generous. Entrusted families are generous, is what it is. Now, generosity might mean something completely different to you than it does to me, and chances are that it does. But you're putting something up above the family. Now, the problem though with that, that dynamic for me to give it all to charity, not to the kids because they didn't earn it. Well, the charity didn't earn it either. So what you're doing is, you aren't being a steward over your assets, and it's more about what you don't want to have happen than what you do. And it also tells to me you don't have much faith in your kids. You didn't do a very good job, right? You don't think that they're going to handle it well. If you were to, out of those two dynamics, I guess I side more with the first guy. Give it all to my kids and hope they don't blow it. Hope I did a good job. At least that shows that I've got some confidence that I make them good stewards because we don't own anything, right? We're just in control of it for this little window of time that we're on this planet. So I understand that more. Now, I definitely feel there's a middle ground. And, when you start talking about this with people that there isn't anything in the law here in the US that says you have to give anything to your kids. You can cut them all out. So how you leave it to them is actually pretty broad, and you can be really restrictive. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of the dictatorial approach. We call that taking a preference and raising it to a principle. So let me explain. Um, most of my clients, although it's changing now because I think higher education is changing in general, but most of my clients still would support their kids going to college in some way, helping with tuition or whatever it might, maybe paying for it entirely, whatever it might be. And the thought process there is, okay, they graduate from college, they get a better job, they have more income, they can supply or they can provide for themselves, right? Self-support. That's the principle, right? You want your child to be self-sufficient. Your preference in how they get there is through education, but that might not necessarily be the best way to do that, right? Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, they never graduated from college. So to me, you have to be careful about that. And none of us have a crystal ball to say, what is the world going to be like in 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? I mean, trust these days, these asset protection trusts, like in South Dakota, can last for 1,000 years. How can you possibly plan? I mean, they change the tax laws on us all the time. Every 4 years, as this political, shift changes, I get a whole new set of regulations that I have to understand, and that's going to happen forever. And so it's just anyway. I probably went off on a tangent there, but it, it's a whole different way to view it, and it's really people are demanding this conversation from their advisors, and your clients definitely should, right? If you go in and your advisors are telling you what you need to do rather than first making sure they understand your family. I mean, I spend the first 45 minutes at least, if not an hour, diving in. I want to understand the kids, right? Chris, we go through your kids at this point in time. You basically have a hockey team at this point, and it's going to take a while, right? We talk, what are they doing in their life? What's good? What's bad? Are there positive things that we need to emphasize? Are there negative things that we need to be concerned about? But in terms of coming back to what families can actually do, the way we view it is not being dictatorial, but setting purpose, right? What is the family purpose? What are we all aligning to create? Right now, most families are still sort of this king and queen approach, right? This monarchy with mom and dad at the top and making all of the decisions. Or another way that I visualize it is mom and dad are at the center of the family, right? They're the nucleus. They're the gravity holding everybody together. And kids are radiating off themselves and building their own families and grandkids and so forth. The problem with families these days is we're so disengaged. We're all on our devices. There isn't a commonality that holds everybody together. And so when mom and dad die, nobody's having Thanksgiving together, right? Everybody's doing their own thing and they're off in orbit. The assets have all been divided, and so they're worth less, and everybody takes them off on their own. Our thought is that, okay, rather than putting mom and dad at the center, put the family purpose. Right now, when mom and dad die, that's still there, holding everybody together. You hear, don't do business with family. I don't understand that. Doesn't make sense to me at all. None of the wealthiest families in the world break up their family businesses. You have the Rothschilds, you have the Rockefellers for that matter. They don't break up their family businesses. Yeah, they have diversified ownership, but the money stays together. So how do you encourage that within your family? Like in my case, my kids are never going to get anything outright, right? They want to start a business because I definitely will. I'll support entrepreneurialism. That is one of our family core values. I know I'm a blood-sucking lawyer, but I also consider myself an entrepreneur, right? We started our firm 12, 13 years ago now. We built Chronology. So it's been fun to build businesses, and I want to encourage that within my kids. But I'm not just going to hand them a check and say, go do it. Right? Even if I'm dead, I wouldn't want that to happen. Right? My wife and I pass away. I have a board of directors, a board of trustees that'll come in and be managing the trust for the benefit of my kids. And they know that entrepreneurialism is something that I would support. And at that time, in that moment, knowing all of the market conditions that are going on, they can help navigate my kids. They say, okay, prepare a business plan. Bring it to the board. The board can help them develop that business plan. But my kids are going to be held accountable. They're going to have to come back to our family bank that they borrowed from and report what went right, what went wrong. I know they're going to make mistakes and they're going to lose money. We all have, right, through our lives. If you're not making mistakes, you're not living, I don't think, a very fun life at least. And so, but I will be really mad if each of my kids make the three same mistakes. By them coming back together and saying, I screwed up here, hopefully they're learning from each other. I'm creating cohesion. Hopefully they're doing business together, right? Doing business with family. So, yeah, and if you think about that and all of these other values that you could put in there, again, generosity, entrepreneurialism, loyalty, connection, right? That's a big one a lot of times for families. We want to stay connected. Well, what are the infrastructures that we need to put into our planning? How are we going to navigate and have our estate lawyer draft our trust so it perpetuates those purposes? I mean, even most trusts that I see that have even been done basically say that when mom and dad die, the assets get held for the benefit of the kids until they're 25. And then at 25, they just go outright to the kids, which isn't wise for a couple of objective reasons, legally speaking. Number one, you put it in their estate for their estate tax reasons if they ever have it. You now make it their asset. So if a creditor comes after them, they get to take it from the kids, but you also lose any power, right? Your trust could say fabulous, wonderful things about what your values are, but if they have all the money in their hands, they're not reading the trust. So it's just a different way to think about it.
Yeah, I know you obviously you have kids aging like mine are, where, my kids are pretty much like teenagers or in their 20s at this point. But I've learned, despite what my younger self, I know when we first sat down and talked, my younger self was like, oh yeah, my kids will be, money geniuses. And then I got older and realized not all my kids are the same. They have different levels of understanding. Some are better stewards of their money than others. Some of them I wouldn't want to give a dime for maybe a long time, depending on if they shape up or not. How, so that's kind of what I'm seeing here is like just putting that 25 age rule could be damaging for some of those people.
If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I think that even if you're absolutely correct, because now I'm thinking of my kids. My oldest will be 20 here in July, and then I've got a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I have high hopes,
Mhm.
and I hope that at some point in time I can think to myself, look, if your mom and I aren't on this earth any longer, you guys are going to be better stewards over the assets than we ever could have been.
Yeah.
You're going to do wonderful things with it. I that would be a wonderful thing to be able to think on my deathbed. I don't think that now. I love them. Absolutely. I have hope, but I don't think that now. And so, no, I want them to wait. And each of my kids, like you said, are going to be different. And it's not because, in essence, aptitude. I mean, they're all extremely intelligent. It's also interest and desire. Like my daughter has no interest in talking about this. We make her. She has to be part of family meetings, all of these various things. But her head, we were just in New York and she was doing dance classes. That's what she wants to do. That's her passion in life right now. And yeah, dad's the grunion that makes her talk about these, economic things and learn these things. And she knows hopefully more than a lot of her colleagues that, haven't been learning this stuff. And we can do the best that we can, but you need to find a way within the family to create um, clear intention, really to lay out three expectations. Okay. And the expectations within a family that need to be laid out are number one, what can each member of the family expect from being part of the family? Right? What's the benefit, right? What do I get from being part of the Miles family? Because if there's no benefit, then what do I care? Okay.
Yeah.
Each family member needs to know what they cannot expect from being part of the family. Well, just because dad's successful doesn't mean you are. You haven't done anything yet, right? Go prove yourself. And I expect you to be self-sufficient and work hard to get there. Whatever that means. Like my second son, he's a hockey player, plays
Mhm.
Division 3 hockey. We travel over the country. I spend ungodly. I mean, these hockey sticks now, they're $350 a piece. So he broke 3 of them in a tournament last week. So but look, this is his dream, and I love it. It keeps him out of trouble. 6 o'clock in the morning, he's down at the ice rink working out. He's 17 years old. When I was 17 years old, if I told people on this podcast what I was doing and think, God, they didn't have smartphones back then, I probably wouldn't have my bar license, right? No, so you look, I want to support them in those endeavors, and as long as they're taking it seriously, then to me that's great, wonderful. And yeah, he may or may not be the same decision-making ability that my oldest is. My oldest is by far the most responsible, the first child syndrome, never caused me any kind of problems. I trust him with my car keys right now, 100%. But my other two just aren't that way, and I hope they will. But you need to give individual. You need to lay out what is expected of them. Right, that's the third expectation. What can I expect? What can I expect? And what is expected of me? And that's my expectation of my kids, which is I don't care what path you choose in life as long as it's productive, right? Yeah, a certain path that I would care about. But if you want to pursue an NHL career, wonderful. I'm behind you as long as you are pursuing it. If again, my daughter, you want to do dance classes, you get accepted to do them in New York, great, let's go. We'll make a family trip out of it. I can build time because I'll speak somewhere, whatever. I'll make that a priority within the family because I know it's a priority for them. And, a lot of families have a hard time identifying that. What are your core values? Put somebody on the spot. Tell me what are your top 5 core values? And very, very few people could articulate that. And a lot of families kind of have a sense of what the values in the household are. And, like a religious family goes to church a lot, and the family knows, okay, look, religion is an important piece of our family dynamics. But how often do you clearly lay that out? And that's where Chronology spawned from. And, we think, our first principle in Entrusted, which is the book we wrote, which is how families can successfully navigate this, is that these families, they know who they are and what they believe. And identifying what your core values are absolutely key. I mean, if I told you my top 5 core values, you're gonna say they're admirable. And if I find out yours, Chris, I'm gonna think that they're admirable. But there is a 1 in 15 million chance that you and I are gonna have the top same core values. And it's because we've lived different lives. I mean, core values are entirely developed based upon your life experience. And one of my core values, which sounds weird coming from a lawyer, but it's honesty. And I mean that. And it was long ago in our family, there was a person that was pretty dishonest, and it caused issues within the family that in some ways we're still dealing with today. I guess, some people don't like to sit next to each other at Thanksgiving. And, if we're sitting down and identify, hey, one of my core values is honesty, and I'm explaining this to my family, what am I doing? Well, I'm teaching them family lore, right? This is who we are as a family. This is something that occurred that you need to understand. Families used to do this, right? They used to sit around the campfire. They used to sit around the dinner table. Now everybody's on their device. But this requires that conversation. I'm telling my kids about me and my family about me, right? Who's dad? And they know that, look, they wreck my car. I'm not going to be happy about it, but I got insurance. If they lie to me about it, I'm going to go nuclear. And think about that with every member of the family. And then my wife and I, we even done this in the reverse, which is, look, Candace, I know what you see as your core values, but I see these 5 core values in you. These are what you bring to the family dynamic for me. Incredibly powerful conversation. And so now you have that as the underpin. And then, of course, as the family dynamic as a whole, what are their collective 5 core values? So that's in our minds, the best process here in terms of first identifying what it is that makes the family tick. And then I can use all these tools. I can choose a trust here, an LLC there, whatever, to help try to, build that house now that I have the blueprints to build.
Yeah, it's really about what you stand for as a family. And I like that because I know for, well, anybody, I mean, that's true in a company, that's true with the family, whatever, like when you stand for.
We do it in companies. Absolutely. We have a whole arm for businesses to go through. Like, I've had my whole team, my paralegals, my associates, I know all of their core values. Why? That makes me so much better in terms of directing them in work, right? If I need to do a presentation for somebody and I have one of my assistants that has an artistic background, or sort of that's where their core values tick, their artistic quadrant, I'm going to have them help me with my presentation. We're doing this for NFL teams. I can't say which, but there is an NFL team that's going through our process, so the coaches know each of the players' core values. We're in talks for because companies are we're going through this weird social change, and a lot of companies are trying to rebrand and get back to really what their core values are. And then the other thing is this is so much, it makes decision making so much easier. We were working with this company, local company here in Salt Lake, and they make this product that is the best product on the market by far, heads and tails better than the next competitor. It costs a lot more, okay? And they had this opportunity a few years ago to outsource some of their manufacturing to China and make a lot more money, but it would mean that the product quality would go down. This failure rate, they tried to explain it to me, but I'm a stupid lawyer, but the failure rate in the product would be higher. And they were struggling because they say, hey, we want to make more money. And one of their core values was excellence. Okay. And that's actually a very common core value for companies. But it was easy to say to them, look, if you take this path, can you still say that excellence is one of your core values? And they go, nope, we can't do it. Done. Decisions made. So it's, again, when you think about with families, I mean, we have travel agencies that we work with that will design a family's trip, their yearly trip, based upon their core values. It's a whole different way to look at how you're running your family. You know, I don't know how much time a lot of people, probably your clients more than the average people, but I don't think a lot of clients spend time preparing for family meetings. I mean, I spend a lot of time going into a boardroom or preparing for meeting with a client, or if I had to go to court, I would spend a heck of a lot of time preparing for how I'm going to address that audience. But a lot of times we just go home and we don't put a lot of forethought in how we're talking about this in an intentional way with our families. And a lot of that is because we don't know how. How do we start this conversation? How do we get the ball rolling? And that's what our whole process of Chronology is meant to do, is that it requires the conversation. And it takes the hard decisions and the hard questions out of mom and dad's hands. I mean, we have licensed to financial advisors. It takes it out of their hands because clients are, again, demanding this conversation. And typically your CPA or your insurance agent doesn't necessarily have always the best bedside manner, and they don't know how to talk about core values. My grandpa had this joke that the way you choose an accountant is that you go into their office and you ask them to tell you a joke. And if they can tell you a joke, actually, you do not use them as an accountant, right? So do you want your accountant about your core values, or you just want to be able to say, these are what our core values are? And it sort of takes that whole uncomfortable conversation, turns it into a positive one, right? When I'm telling my kids honesty is important to me, I'm not saying, Thomas, you were so dishonest last week, shame on you. I'm just saying it's important to me. It's a whole different way to look at the family conversation.
Yeah. Love that. Well, two quick questions, and I know I got to let you go at some point.
Yeah.
But I would be amiss if I didn't do this. But so you had mentioned the family bank concept, right? And I know that gets tossed out there a lot. I know several of our listeners have read books like What Would the Rockefellers Do, which I know you actually inspired a lot of that in the author's book there. But what I hear a lot of times with family bank references, a lot of times people think it's an insurance product, right? They think it's just life insurance is the family bank, but that's not the case, is it?
No, I mean, again, and what would the Rockefellers do, which I think is a great book and written by, Garrett, who you know well, and I know well, and Michael Isom. I don't know if I inspired a lot of that. I obviously, Garrett has his own mind and he talks about it kind of in a different way than I do. But in working with him and just like I do with any other client, I'm saying, what your estate planning says is that if something happens to you, your kids just get everything. And that was not his message, right? His message was much more purposeful. And I'm saying, look, how do we bring this in? And, I probably, hopefully maybe started some of the planting of the seeds there, but no, he's certainly got his own mentality on that. And I think very, very highly of him still. But no, to me, family banking is tossed around way too much and nobody really knows what they're talking about when they're saying it. To me, it's what you're trying to do there is you're copying the Rothschild family. People will say the Rockefellers, but it's not actually the Rockefellers. Rockefellers have kind of done this, but it's more the Rothschilds, because what happened with the Rothschilds as that family was developing is that Meyer Rothschild was really viewing his family as a business. which sounds callous to a lot of people, right? That, hey, I don't think so, because I put a lot of time and effort into my businesses, and I put a lot of time and effort and investment within my family. And each one of my kids are an extremely valuable asset to me. And I expect these assets of our family to perpetuate the legacy that I'm hoping to leave. Well, he thought the same way. And what he did is, as each of his sons were born, he would put a lot of, money into their education and development. And then he would send them off to some central locale within Europe and set them up to start their own banking conglomerate, which now arguably controls $1 or $2 trillion, if not more. And this idea of seeing your family members as an asset of the company, what if you lose one of those assets? Well, I put a lot of money into my kids. I am out economically. Yes, absolutely traumatic, devastating, 100%. But I'm out. And I've lost that steward. I've lost that asset of the family. And having life insurance would help recoup some of that death benefit coming back into the family. And that's what people talk about in terms of family banking. Okay, mom and dad have life insurance policies based upon whatever, philosophy you think. I mean, as you may remember, I've been licensed in insurance since 1996. I was an insurance agent before I was a lawyer. Now, the top three hated professions in the world are insurance agents, lawyers, and car salesmen. So I meet two of the last, top three. My best friend's a car salesman, so maybe I get all three by osmosis. But and I'm a huge fan of insurance, and I don't. Something happens to me, as long as I'm on this planet, I can provide for a nice living for my family. But I don't want my wife to necessarily have to go back to work. And so I want a good death benefit there to come in. And then, like we talk about, I like it on kids because you ensure insurability when they're young, and policies are inexpensive. They can build that cash value. You can give it to them when they get married. You can help them use it to buy a home. All of the things that you and I know insurance is great for, and you understand insurance a lot better than I do. But I love all of those things. But to me, it's just one of the tools. And you have to as your family changes, your dynamics change. And as your kids get older, maybe you don't need as much insurance. And I'm not necessarily a huge believer of have as much insurance as you can qualify for, which some people, do think like, and not necessarily, and I understand that philosophy. It's not necessarily the philosophy that I have. I mean, I do have a lot of insurance, probably more than I need, and I use it in dynamic ways now, and I borrow from the policy and all of the amazing tax benefits that we use with insurance. But it highlights that crystal ball that I was mentioning earlier that none of us can foresee. All they have to do with the strike of a pen is change the tax code, and now all of a sudden insurance is sub income tax. And it's nowhere near as efficient as it might be. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because the insurance company has the largest lobby in Congress. They make the NRA look like a redheaded stepchild, and usually the insurance agencies get what they want. And right now, they've convinced Congress that life insurance death benefits should not be subject to the income tax. How that ought to be leveraged. That's powerful. Now, how that ought to be leveraged when somebody's estate plan also needs to take in mind what are the values, right? You have to take those intangible goals, the core values. You have to align them with the tangible assets. Otherwise, your work's for naught.
Right. And that's one thing I've noticed too, when people say, okay, like, sounds like this life insurance thing is what it's got to be. It sounds really complex. I say, hold on. The life insurance is the easy part. The complex part is the estate plan. That directs everything. The insurance is just insurance, right? It's the one thing that rolls into the plan, funds the trust. But it's the trust. Like, that's the thing you got to really nail down. And so I was like, don't even worry about the insurance part. That's the easy part, right? And I know that's what you do. That's what you specialize in is, okay, how do we take those core values? How do we actually integrate that into an estate plan that allows your wish to perpetuate for generation to generation?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's just, again, it is a generational shift in how those of us that are now making decisions under the head of households and families, and it's what we want, right? We want our kids to be successful in life. I think we've all realized that that does not necessarily come from money. Just getting a big pile of money can actually destroy that if it's not harnessed the right way. And we're going to experience the largest wealth transfer in the next generational shift that the human race has ever experienced. An estimated 40 to 80 trillion dollars is going to change hands in the next 30 years, with the baby boomers passing and then our generation moving on. And most of that, I know you talked about 70% don't do any estate planning. It's entirely unharnessed. And, it's just going to land on the feet of these people that are going to be eating bonbons on the couch, right? That's my nightmare, is that my kids are just sitting on the couch playing video games for the rest of their lives. And again, current behavior is pointing to that, but they're going to get kicked out of this house at some point.
Yeah. Well, before I leave my last question, I always ask every guest. I know if they want to contact you, it sounds like they just reach out by email. Is that correct?
Yeah, the best email for me is this corny one. It's teamandrew@yorkhowell.com. So just TAMANDREW at Yorkhowell, YORKHOWELL.com. That'll go to me. It'll go to my paralegals, my assistants, and then they're happy to coordinate, meeting. Typically what I do is like to, have at least an hour, 90 minutes to meet with a client, really understand who they are and what they're trying to achieve. And usually by the end of that, I'll know what they need to do. And as you know, I'm really, really educational and throw more information on people than they probably ever wanted to know about this stuff. But yeah, I'd love to talk to anybody.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes too, just in case somebody, can't figure out, what team is or whatever, but,
Yeah, your is not actually a letter.
that's right. Yo, York. Yeah, exactly. Well, last question for you is, obviously it's the Money Ripples podcast, and we talk about the ripple effect that we can create in others' lives. What do you feel is your ripple effect, Andrew?
Oh, that's a great one. I honestly hope, and David, my law partner, and I, we talk about this a lot. We sincerely hope that we can create an impact, even if it's a very small impact, in how this wealth is being used in a dynamic way. I don't think the government is good at using our money. I actually think my clients are far better in using and handling their money than the government is. So how do we help perpetuate that, but with purpose and those legacies being preserved? That's what I'm hoping my ripple effect would be, because I know, everything that we do, like you say, ripples out, but you have to have a hierarchy within the people that are in your lives, right? My grandpa would say you're juggling in your life glass balls and rubber balls. And, some of these rubber balls, your friends that come and go out of your life, if they drop, they'll bounce back. You get a new friend. But the glass balls, if you let them drop, these are your family members, that could break everything. So to me, this legacy planning and the ripple effect of other people being affected, I think you first have to look at your family within, right? Your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, and then maybe branch out from there. Now, obviously, from a societal benefit, that's going to benefit everybody, right? If my kids are making an impact, they have a business that's employing people, well, they're making a positive ripple effect. It's much better than if they're on welfare, right? So to me, it's if I can produce happy, healthy, sustainable kids that are making a difference in this world, then I've accomplished my ripple effect.
I love it. That's a very worthwhile goal. And yeah, hopefully we can help perpetuate that with you as well, for our own lives, because I know we have our own self-interest there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, appreciate your time today. This has been so valuable. It's been so good having you on. I know we could have gone hours longer, but, we're getting people on the drive time. So, again, appreciate you sharing and being so generous with your time with us.
Yeah, thank you much. Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, appreciate it.
Well, everybody, there you have it. You just got several $100s worth of time from Andrew for free. And so congratulations there. But definitely remember that this podcast only works when you do, right? It's not about being a hero of the word, but being a doer as well. So go and make it a wonderful and prosperous week so you can create a ripple effect through your lives as well. We'll see you later.